We're going to discuss today a topic which we could talk about all day long, but we're going to spend an hour and a half on it. And I want you to contribute to it by giving me examples, by contributing anything around this word, these two words that I'm going to give you, so that all of us and all the people hearing the tape can see it from a different viewpoint. I can give you mine, and I will. I'll contribute. But mention what it means to you, anything that occurs to you that's constructive about this idea. And when I mention it, you'll see how broad it is, how vast, how many things we could say about it. And we're going to think rightly. We're going to think rightly about, and this is the topic, about unnecessary thought. Now find some synonyms for that. We're going to talk about and discuss useless thought, pointless thought, destructive thought, uselessly repetitious thought, nagging thought. Does that ring a bell? Nagging thought? A lady told me once, about a year ago, that her mind was dominated by a certain type of repetitious thought, and it drove her mad, practically, you understand, because she couldn't get rid of it. It kept invading her all the time. Now this is similar to what we experience. It may not be a particular one that invaded her, but we have our own ways of being a slave to repetitious and therefore useless thought. First of all, see some of the damages of it. One, if I'm caught up in nagging, repetitious, monotonous thought, it's captured me. That's all there is. There is nothing else. Therefore, all this time that I'm in it, I have wasted. I could have been working on myself. But I can't because I'm captured. I'm taken over. Another thing, we can see how it connects with our feelings. And then when feelings enter into it, you have a thought of something that happened to you in the past, recently or many years ago. And that goes nag, nag, nag all day. I don't have to tell you this because you've experienced this, right? And you get in despair and you say, how on earth am I ever going to get out of this? We're going to find out by concentrating it around the idea of unnecessary thought. That's our general theme. I want you to tell me, volunteers, first we're going to start with examples. Let's see what we're talking about. Someone may have an unnecessary thought that you have but unaware of it, or maybe you're embarrassed by saying it, and this other person saying it makes you a little more courageous in seeing it in yourself. We're not hiding anything here. We know we're in bad shape, right? We know this. We know it and we want it out. Let's see it. So, give me some examples as a starting point of unnecessary, useless thought. How about shameful thought? Are you ever ashamed of some of the thoughts you think? Of course you are. And a lot of them do connect with sex. A lot of them connect with resentments and that very, very hard word which people don't even like to think about and say, with hateful thoughts. Thoughts of hatred. Thoughts of violence. You know that some people are so dead and so asleep that they don't know they have all this hatred and violence in them? Do you know this? Such people, you stay away from them. Don't you try to save them. Don't you have anything whatever to do with them. Very tactfully and gently, you push them out of your life. These people will turn on you and they'll jump on you. And then you're so surprised, well, I did so much for him. You did it for them because you wanted something from them, because there was something wrong with you, and you thought that they would keep you comforted, keep you happy. And you're so surprised to find that they were an entirely different kind of human being than you thought they were. This is because you are an entirely different kind of a person than you think you are. Now we'll ask those of you listening to this tape, do you know how much violence you have in you? One of the mistakes, I know it, I'm not deceived about this. One mistake you're making is the refusal to see the violence. And you know why. We've covered this. Because it goes contrary to ideas you have about yourself as being a nonviolent person. And so the violence remains to tear you apart. Your violence tears you apart. It tears me apart. Do you like being torn apart? Most people do. Being torn apart, again, gives you a feeling of aliveness. False feeling of life by which you can say, I am someone. I'm a person dominated by violence, for example. All right?
Well, thoughts that we think others should behave as we want them to behave.
That is an example of a useless thought?
Yes.
All right, expand on it a little bit. That's good. Others should behave
As I want them to behave.
All right. Why is it there, for example? Why do you have this thought at all that this person and that person should behave in a way that pleases you? Why is it there?
Because I think they owe me something.
Why do they owe you something? I'm not just
No, I know. Because if I do things for others, then I expect them to do things for me. It's a trading.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a useless thought. Because I have this image that I can do things for other people. And if I have this image, then I'm going to expect other people to behave towards me in a certain way.
They must go together.
Right.
They must go together. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about a useless thought. That when you have it for somebody else, and they strike back at you, then you see the violence that you have within you, and you don't like that.
All right, take violence as a useless thought. Boy, I'll tell you, may I ask you, do you want to wake up? Do you want out? This
Yes.
is, you answer to yourself. Now I'll tell you how. You do see how much violence you have in you. You see it. We know about it. Listen, you can't get away with anything here. You know that. And you have accepted this up to a point, otherwise you wouldn't come back. But you also see that you're not being criticized just because it gives us pleasure to criticize you, but because we sense that we have to get rid of it. That's all that counts. It has to go. All right? Someone comment. Someone give me all right, Sally.
Okay, critical thought. There's a good one right there that we do every day. And if only we could see it.
Give me an example.
An example is criticizing you, say, for the way you're sitting. That's just a small example. And we do this unconsciously in our own mind. We see something, we criticize it. Anything at all.
You want me to sit straight like that?
Well, say that's a for
Yeah,
instance.
that-
Yes, sit straight.
Is there pleasure in criticism?
Yes, the false self gets pleasure out of it.
Because if I can criticize you,
Then I'm
simple, by
superior.
comparison.
I think it's a
Uh-huh.
violent pleasure.
It is. That's what
It's a
I mean,
violent
Rose.
pleasure.
If I criticize you, then I'm putting myself in a superior position as not being like you. And then you have the same thoughts about me because I don't do things that you would do.
But basically, you have to be a violent person to criticize another person, don't you? Basically.
But everyone is violent, unless they're on their own.
Can you see the difference? Let's bring this in, then we'll come back. And that's part of it. Can you see the difference between criticizing someone and seeing the fact of their condition?
Yes.
Can you see the difference in this?
There's no-
All right, somebody who said yes, explain the difference.
Well, if you criticize a person, then you're looking from your image. But if you see the fact of a person, then there's no image. You haven't created a division, so there's no me to criticize.
There's simply the fact there.
The fact is
Now
telling you-
look. Turn this inward into self-criticism. If you criticize yourself, you are building your images. You're building your egotism. I am building my vanity because I'm saying I am a big sinner or I'm a big saint, either one, with all the variations in between. But if I see the fact that I'm violent, that there's something wrong with me, that I've been suppressing all these years and smiling about it and all that, if I see it as a fact, without an I there, I end it, I destroy it. I'm not continuing it by enjoying it, falsely enjoying it, enjoying my picture of being a violent person. But I won't call it violence, because I'm very tricky with labels. I will call it enthusiasm for the Lord, or whatever. And in the name of God, I'll kill millions of human beings, and I'll deceive them, and I'll steal from them, and I'll break their hearts, and I'll be a vicious animal. It is true that there's nothing bad about human nature that isn't true. And one of the crises that you will have as you grow, how shall I put it, is to wonder whether you can keep your own mind when you begin to see, really see it. You will sit and watch something on television about intellectuals or whatever who are going to save the world, and you can see their insanity, and you will look with horror at that and you see, well, surely millions of human beings watching this see through this, and therefore they will have nothing to do with it. They will have everything to do with it because they really don't see the insanity of this world. Useless thoughts. Let's stick to the subject. What do you have to say about useless thoughts?
Imaginative thoughts.
Pardon?
Imaginative thoughts.
Okay. Imagination working as useless thoughts. Daydreaming?
Useless thoughts. I spent 4.5 or so hours driving up this morning, and I wonder what percentage was in wasting useless thought. Now, this is going back over a couple of business problems that came up last week that had no answers to them. I didn't need to dwell on them. They were in relation to my relationship with other people that had no... I could have been aware of the beautiful ride up here and see different things each time I come up. But
Yes.
no, I had to... Probably 7/8 of my time was spent in thinking some negative, the ego, my ego, against the business problems that came up, against the people that
Yes.
participated in these business problems.
Yeah.
Now, this was a waste because there was no answer to those problems,
Right.
but I spent an awful lot of time dwelling on them.
In other words, that is your particular work of being conscious of wasted thoughts, when you could have been working on yourself in many ways, varying them.
Vain thoughts are useless. What will they think of me? Will they approve of me? Will they accept me? And yet a lot of energy is used by a lot of people with thoughts of that kind.
Yes, all right, let's go into that a little bit. I want you to like me, to appreciate me, to think well of me. When I do that, I am now under strain, because I feel I'll get certain advantages by behaving in a certain way toward you, being nice to you even. Maybe that's part of my little game, being nice to you. As Sally said, I would begin trading with you. Can you imagine, right imagination, how you would behave toward other people if you didn't care whether you pleased them or not? Now, don't go to the opposite, as people always do, and say, well, that would be unkind. We're not saying we're saying don't be hypocritical. When you're not hypocritical, you're not unkind. What I'm saying is, can we find where we have strained behavior? Why do I want to please you in most cases? Why does one person want to please another? Because this is a form of self-security, of self-protection. I am lonely, I will please you so that you will be my friend, or my wife, or my husband, or whatever. And I'm afraid of displeasing you. Now I'm afraid. I have to be afraid. I'm afraid of losing you. Now I'm going to sacrifice myself to you. You see why you have to leap into the dark and say, from now on, I'm going to behave to please. Now be careful, don't leap ahead. From now on, I'm going to behave to please myself. Don't leap now. You know what I'm going to say. I'm going to behave to please my real nature, my true nature, not this self which is built up of these images and all these false ideas about who I am. This is genuine self-trueness. You'll never, never, never be in right relationship with another human being until you have pleased yourself. Boy, the screams you will hear from people who are living in hypocrisy when they hear this. They don't want to. Look, because this requires seeing yourself as you are. Seeing what a hypocrite you are. Seeing how violent you are. Seeing how you sacrifice yourself to other people so that you can keep them in your petty little cramped life, your miserable little circle. Dare, now, please don't think ahead. Dare to displease other people, to put it that way. And you know what will happen? Sally, you tell us what will happen, because you know this. What will happen if you start behaving in a way that pleases trueness? I'll even put it this way.
You mean you'll lose all your friends?
Of course you will.
All your so-called friends.
I already lost them, so I'm beyond that. I don't want to lose my friends.
You can't,
Miss them.
you can't depend on other people.
Because they get frightened.
At first, when you start to change, would you like a little insight? When you start to change a little bit, beginning, nobody notices anything. You don't even notice it yourself. It's too faint at the start. And then, unconsciously, they're not doing this, they're never awake to anything. But quite unconsciously, they'll be noticing that you behave in slightly different ways, which you will be doing. You don't blab as much. You don't get quite as critical of other people. You don't talk about the same things you used to talk about. And they begin to notice this. It's still not much of a threat to them because they don't see it as a threat yet. They're not making connections yet. Then as you get really more courageous and go further and saying, I'm sorry, but I'm not going down to the beer hall tonight with you. I just can't go along with that kind of thing anymore. Now they begin to get a little bit alarmed because you're no longer their buddy who will do whatever they want to do. Now they begin to feel threatened a little bit. I just use that as an example, but there are many. For example, a husband and wife, one of them belongs to a false religion, some kind of a false philosophy, and they are very much wrapped up in it, and you refuse to go along with it anymore. Now you make them feel insecure. There's going to be a crisis there. You stay right with it so you'll know how to handle it when this crisis comes along, if it comes along. You don't do anything dumb. You don't do anything foolish. You just continue to work. You have nothing else to do but to work on yourself. All right, that is a useless thought, to want others to be pleased with us. And to say, from now on, I'm going to please my true nature regardless of the consequences of this. You may lose a lot of people, but I'll tell you, an awful lot of good things will happen to you. You won't get involved in a situation where if you lose someone in your life, you're going to fall apart. You know, human beings are terrible. When they see you're depending upon them, they get great pleasure because they get great power over knowing that you're dependent on them. And they'll work you for all they can get. And at the slightest new advantage to them, they will leave you. They have no other way to behave than this. You understand? Because they are so desperate for security. They're so desperate to find an anchor, something to hang on to. And the bigger the anchor, the better. So if you're a little anchor, they'll leave you and go on to another. And on they go, ruining themselves, never seeing what they're doing to themselves. But you have to stop doing the very same thing yourself. Latching yourself onto a new friend, a new wife or husband, a new philosophy or new religion. All right. What else is useless thought, unnecessary thought?
Thoughts that if only I had this, I'd be happy. If I had the new house, the new car, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, it would make me happy. Useless thoughts that if only something happened.
Which brings in the illusion of time. Right? I'm miserable now, tomorrow I'll be happy if I get this or get that. Which means I've divided myself. Already, do you see? See how much self-division enters into this? We divide ourselves at every turn. We divide ourselves by, if I get this physical object, if I get this human being, if in tomorrow. Be very conscious of how we divide ourselves in dozens of ways in our mind. That means we are thinking about our welfare, our benefit. We are thinking about it. And if we think about it, we're already apart from it. Because there's no time in God has no time. God is timeless. God has no division. Truth has no division. All I have to do is see how I have separated myself from the all, capital A-L-L. I've divided myself from this by thinking, by thought, by imagination, by desire, by emotions. If I can catch myself while I'm driving, going anywhere, catch myself being apart and practice, bring myself back, bring myself back, bring myself back, all day long, all night long, as I'm going to sleep. Bring yourself back that you're lying there in bed instead of daydreaming about something that happened during the day. And also, as Bob said, seeing the uselessness and the futility of all this thought, that it leads nowhere. It can't lead anywhere. If you were thinking about something on the business level where there was necessary thought, that's okay, that's fine. You think that you have to, you couldn't get tires from this company in Dayton, so you're going to get tires from the company in Chicago. That is fine, that is practical thought. But then you drop it. And then when you go back to work, you pick it up again. That is proper memory. That's practical memory. But to run through our minds all these things about how we were hurt in past years and how in future years we can make it better, this is false thinking, wrong thinking. We must learn to think less because we see the uselessness of it.
How about suspicious thoughts?
All right, tell us about suspicious thoughts.
Well, I don't know if it's the same as any other thought.
Well,
Like a feeling, what are these people thinking about me while walking around the street? These are suspicious thoughts. Then this builds up fear. You want to go into a restaurant or meet someone. These fears are partly due to the suspicious thoughts one has of oneself.
yes.
Then is this related back to the imaginary imaginary creatures we have of ourselves or what?
Yeah. And there's a very frightened person in back of these suspicious thoughts, is there not? And there's and a very self-centered person in back of them.
And now that this go back to childhood years where maybe I was frightened or something by something, then I mistrusted the person, then that builds up something, but the suspicious thoughts.
Yes, suspicion is a false attempt, a wrong attempt at self-protection. I feel that if I can become conscious of that threat out there, like coming into a busy room or something like that, and I can prepare, listen to this now, listen to this. If I can see everything about this, coming into a room with a lot of strange people, I feel ill at ease, I feel nervous, and my little mind starts working, says, if I can prepare myself to behave properly to these people, say the right thing to that man, and the right thing to that woman, and smile to this person, if I can just prepare myself properly, I'll be protected. I won't get hurt by them, because they are frightening to me. See, this is why it is a wrong move. Now you tell me, why is that wrong to prepare?
You'll break open.
It's not going to work.
Yeah, you're protecting your image there again.
Because how do we know how they're going to act? We can't prepare for things.
That's one.
really.
That's one reason for it. Have you ever done this by this kind of amusing? Have you ever made big plans about how you're going to behave in a situation, and you went there, and it was nothing at all like that?
Uh-huh.
They didn't behave that way, and you didn't behave that way. See? Go ahead.
No, I was just saying you really can't prepare. You might want to prepare, but when the moment comes,
It
some
falls
other,
apart. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not the same person as you were when you thought this.
Right. Right.
You're an entirely different person.
So, what's the solution? Take no thought for tomorrow. See? See? Don't prepare for anything psychologically. You prepare for rainy weather by wearing your raincoat. That is, see, we can all see how clearly we can see the difference between right thinking and useless thinking. We can get right down the center. You can divide them. Practice this. Walking into any situation without psychological preparation. Go ahead, Sue.
I was going to say, and not only that, when we get into the situation, we may have forgotten entirely that we did prepare for it.
Yes. Yeah. Now, when you practice this, what's going to happen to you the first 100 times you try it? When you walk into this room, I am not going to prepare or protect. How are you going to feel?
Very insecure and
Scared.
very fearful.
Do it. Do it. This is being your fear. See the connections? Being your fear, therefore you understand it. As long as you try to conquer fear, there is a you who is trying to conquer fear, which is an illusion, so nothing can happen except the continuance of fear, of suspicion. Look at the pain, if nothing else, in suspicion. Look how pained you are. Fear is pain.
Oh no, I was just going to say other destructive thoughts are fear of whatever you're scared of. Fear that you'll get ill. You're frightened, so you think these thoughts.
Right.
Frightening thoughts.
Right.
You're scared in case something happens to you.
Do you understand thoroughly? If not, give close attention to this, and those of you listening to this tape too, please. Do you understand that in reality, you're walking into the room with all these strangers. Some of them are important people, and you're impressed. And if you're impressed by people, work on that, please, real hard. Don't be impressed by anyone. That means that you have a Savior who's going to save you in God's name. Do you understand that there's no one there to be protected? See? When you walk into a busy room and try to protect something, this is the illusion right there already. that there's someone there to be protected. Do you understand this, Bob? Explain it to us, if you will,
Well,
in your own way.
I mean, it just goes back to the ego and what we think our ego consists of.
Right.
When, as you say, if you can break down this false ego, the true self comes forth that can't be hurt, that can't be vilified, that can't be whatever,
Attack, whatever.
whatever you want to call it.
There's no one there. There really isn't. If there's someone there, you get hurt. How simple this is. And how great to see it. And how much work. Because we're going to fight every second with every trick we have. The old nature is going to fight every second to hang on to this. But that's why we're here. To get onto all these little tricks, to uncover them so that we can drop them, just through exposure, drop them. And we'll do it a little bit at a time. There is no one there. There really isn't.
Have you ever known someone to have their feelings hurt very easily and will never forget to remind you that you hurt their feelings?
Yeah.
And you keep thinking, well, now how can I smooth this situation over? This other person, or maybe ourselves, just aren't going to let this to come about.
We get great pleasure in remembering hurts. That's all part of it, the whole business.
I found myself when I'm looking at TV, especially at the news, the Vietnam news, I don't think I'm violent, you know. But then I'm watching the movies, how the American soldiers are over there. Then sometimes I wish they had finished off with all of those communists. Now that's pretty violent, you know. Intellectually, if you think about it, it's pretty violent, you know, because you're killing off human beings. It really does show how deep the violence is in oneself, you know. But you can feel it sometimes, the violence I have. At least I can feel it sometimes.
While you're watching movie violence, you're watching for in yourself? Oh, yes. Yes. I'll tell you when to look for violence. Remember yesterday we talked about frustration? How terribly frustrated we are because we don't see all these things. The next time you're frustrated, take a good, long, courageous, honest look at your state, and you will see violence. You must see violence. It has to be there when you feel frustrated because they're both the same thing. They're both part of the whole negative reaction to not getting what we want. Look at violence. When you see it, you'll see all the answers to why the world is the way it is. Not just war. That's an obvious example of human insanity. But you see many other things. You'll see why the social system operates the way it does. Because violent people are parading as non-violent people.
This is another useless thought that the world should change.
Pardon?
This is another useless thought that the world should change. You know, frustrated because the world hasn't changed.
Yes, and how do we have some time left in? How do we get out of that? By seeing that it isn't going to change. If you think you can change the world, or even one small corner of it, you are still under illusion. You haven't even changed yourself. And furthermore, you don't want to, because it's hard work and it's very unpleasant work. The world is not going to change. You can change. Then you will understand that it's not going to change, and you will no longer be bothered by it in the way you were before. Because you're not trying to do the impossible anymore. Now, reduce it from the worldwide scale to your own family. You all have relatives. Your relatives aren't going to change at all, in all probability, from the way they are. Think of some of your relatives who are in trouble. Come on now, be real honest. You know deep down inside of you that they're not going to change, don't you? And they're not. A miracle would have to happen. You can't make a miracle happen to anyone else. You can make it happen to yourself. what we're working on here. And when you see this, many other benefits come. The ending of false guilt, that you should do something for them. You can't do anything for them. Look, just imagine this is the first time you've ever heard these principles. And one of the first things you will hear is the idea of self-responsibility. You are responsible for your life. You are, I am. No one is going to save me. I can save myself, to use that word. No one is going to save you except yourself. When you see this, all this sentimental nonsense about helping the downtrodden and all that will disappear. You used to think this was love on your part. It was hypocrisy on your part. It was a projection of your own self-pity. And then you cease to make things worse by trying to help people who will not help themselves. You know how easy it is to use the word love in every other sentence and to deceive yourself into thinking that you have love. The ending of self-deception is the beginning of our work. Maybe those of you who are listening to this tape don't know how strong we must get into these things. Maybe you don't know that you have to stop lying to yourself. If you're willing to stop lying to yourself, then there are possibilities. If not, then you'll never make it. We're here to help each other to stop lying to ourselves. And if we get our feelings hurt, fine. Come back and get them hurt some more. And every time you do, you will gain a little something. If you run away, then there's nothing for you.
It's great to be free of people, even in a small way, as you said, about really compulsive helping.
Tell us about that. Compulsive saving the world.
Right. Well, this was something I had more than I have now.
Yeah.
It was a compulsion because I wanted to be generous. This was an ideal I had of myself.
Right.
Being generous and helping people.
Right.
And so I got to the point where I actually went out and did help people, but then when I became so involved, I saw that it was impossible to actually help people. They're not going to change, as you said.
They're not going to.
But you have to get to a certain point of actually doing it and getting...
And seeing.
And seeing it, not just having it in your mind that you're a helpful person, but when you see that people don't react the way you want them to and don't change, and you have done all this, you've wasted a lot of energy, really.
Do you see how when you see your resentment against helping people who then stab you in the back, so to speak, you see your resentment. I did all this for you and look what you did to me. Do you see how inward turning is helpful? You see your resentment and you see why you did all this. You did it as a bargain, as a trading. People,
so your life is controlled.
Right.
Really.
Right.
You don't have any life of your own. You're doing all these things to
And
keep this wonderful image.
And they will,
I'm a nice person.
they will try to make you feel guilty in order to keep the gifts coming. People who don't want to save themselves will always try to save the world. It's so easy to give money to charity. So easy to go down to the rescue mission or wherever it is and help the poor downtrodden. Get to see what bums we are. Never mind those bums out there. See what psychological bums we are.
But there is a time when we really don't know that there is anything else. That's the point.
Right.
At this time, I didn't know there was anything else. That I could be free of it.
Of course you did. You're conditioned by your upbringing, your religious beliefs, right? and they became your chains. And it's so confusing. It is indeed. You don't know what to do. Who raised their hand? Bob or not? No.
I'd say we're all rather fortunate that we got to the point where we were pained enough and saw that this was not the way to live, and that there must be another way, and apparently the strong desire to want another way led us to these right principles.
Yes.
Because I was like Sally, I was out to save many people, and my own life was such a mess that I refused to look at it.
See how that preserves an image, a false image? You're part of a religious group or a social group that's doing good, quote marks. Therefore, you're a good person. That's it. You've got it made. God will reward you in heaven. What else is there to think about? Now you don't have to think anymore. But boy, are you resentful. Boy, do you have the hatred. Boy, do you have the nightmares. The violence. Right, Rudy?
Without getting off the subject, Mr. Howard, could you you've mentioned before, I know, about our extreme moods of elation or excitement seem to have a counter effect of extreme depression, or whenever we allow ourselves the, how can I phrase it, the enjoyment of these extreme, what we feel are exciting, wonderful, way up feelings, there is a counter.
That's good to observe, that the pendulum must always swing back the other way. When you see someone who's real excited about, shall I say it, about getting married, emotional elation, some of you have reactions to that, about getting the new home, getting the raise or whatever it might be, great emotional elation, you know very well, you should know if you've looked at yourself at all, that you're going to be depressed when it swings the other way. Because, remember we said that the mind works in opposites, and the emotions do too, and they're connected with it. So you have no choice. But even in the elation there is fear, because there's something in you that knows that it's a false position. But it's so hard to let go. We know that. We understand the difficulty of this. We understand how we thrill getting that letter that said you have won the prize or whatever it says. The first thing you do is to run over to your neighbor and wave the letter in front of his hand. Boy, you're going to be depressed a couple days later. It's all based in illusion. This feeling you have taken as you. And when it swings, you will be depressed. Sally has something to say.
No, I don't.
Is that the end of the tape one?
No, we got paid.
Pardon?
We got paid.
All right. Have you observed this in yourself? The swinging over from left to right, from up to down? So, when you're in the up, why don't you look at it and say, I know what's going to happen next. That is self-observation. That is self-knowledge. That begins to end it because why? Because you no longer identify, I am the excited, happy person right now. When you say, I am excited and elated, you will have to say, I am depressed. So what do? You pull the I out of both extremes. If you insist on the excitement of this new girlfriend or boyfriend or winning the $1 million in the prize, you also insist equally upon the depression that has to come. There's no choice. There's no choice. All these people who appear so happy, look, we're great actors and actresses, aren't we? Huh? You don't see the misery. They save that till they get home. And the husband and wife, they go out to the party and they're both happy and excited and they tell about the things. They come home and fight because the pendulum has to swing over. Pull the sense of I out of both the elation, pull it out of the depression. What am I talking about when I say pull the I out of feeling of elation or depression? What am I talking about? Someone explain it.
You mean don't get your ego involved?
Okay.
Don't
Okay.
let it be a psychological dependency.
That is not you at all in there. That is
You're
a...
not even there.
Pardon?
You're not there. The you is not there. You just are.
And you're able more and more to drop your sense of self out of this as you practice, because you see the falsity. That's all. You see how untrue it is. You see it's an unnecessary thought. And it's the thought that has been keeping you miserable. Elated, depressed all day long. Are those of you listening to this tape aware of this in yourself? Look at it. Just see. Where there's one, there has to be the other. We are going above the swing of the opposites. Yes?
Mr. Howard, when you earlier said that the emotions are also have this swinging, you meant negative emotions, not true emotions.
Well, no. Yeah, obviously, we're talking about a
Negative,
false position. I'll tell you want to know what a good feeling is? This is an authentic feeling. They're very rare, but they're there. You get rid of the false ones. Never mind what the true ones are. They'll come of themselves. They will. You throw the junk out of the room, and the new furniture will come in. Feeling that this is right. This is right. And you feel it when you see what is wrong. All right, let's have general comments and questions. Just open discussion on anything you'd like to talk about. Talk about things that might make you just slightly uncomfortable to talk about. Just slightly, not too much.
How do you get over the fear of what people are thinking about you?
Somebody answer that. We've answered it, but let's do it again. Maybe you can say it from another viewpoint. How do we get over the fear of, repeat that exact phrase.
How do we get over the fear of what people are thinking about
Are
us?
thinking about us. All right, how? Of course, through understanding, but what must we understand? Who is this self that is so concerned with himself? See? If you can see that much, then we can see where we have to work. This is what we want to do, to see where we have to work, to dissolve the illusion that there is a psychological self there that needs protection at all. See, it's this business of protection that we're concerned with. Look, doesn't it get clear after a while? I have an idea of who I am. That idea must be protected, because it's only an idea that I have about myself. But this is all I know about myself, is that I am a very young, good-looking man. See, this is what I know about myself. All right, now I must protect this against growing old. Already I'm in despair because I know I can't do it. It's impossible. I'll use all the artificial devices I can to stay young, for example, to stay young and good-looking, because I get certain rewards out of being young and good-looking. Now I'm afraid of its opposite, old and not so good-looking, right? But the whole thing, physically, of course, I may be young, I may be good-looking, or I may not be. But it's the psychology of it, because it's the I that's involved. I want to remain young and good-looking because this is all I know about myself. If I didn't have this, who would I be? I would be nobody. We're out to become nobody. This is what we're doing here, to understand what it means to be nobody, which is many, many steps into fear. Right? Into fear, you're walking right into it. Look, we're walking right into the end of ourselves. That is the way out. But you have to do it. As Sally said, you have to actually see it and not just think about it and not talk about it. This is why it's important to come to a group like this and take as much as you can. Be as insulted as much as you can, then come back next week and take some more. If you get sensitive and fall away, which many, many people do, then of course you'll never find out. Come back and be insulted, be hurt.
The fear of rejection also.
Fear of rejection. Who gets rejected? An idea you have. If you didn't have an idea about your self-importance, how could you be rejected? There's no one there to be rejected. There's no one there. Do you understand this?
I understand that.
That there's no one there? There really isn't. There really isn't. This isn't a philosophy. This is a fact. But see how frightening it is? This is so frightening to most people, they want nothing to do with it. So they're going to remain right where they are, scared, hostile, critical of the truth, hating the truth. Did it ever occur to you that people, you understand we're not talking from vanity, and if we are, then we better work on ourselves. Do you understand that people who do not want these things are haters of the truth? That's kind of rough, isn't it? But this is what it is, and you had better see it. See it in yourself. Actually hate the truth, and try this one on. They hate everything that is good and everything that is truly decent. Period. You see this, and then you see how much you're in love with this woman. Then you see how much you're longing for this handsome man who's an up-and-coming, successful businessman. You see if you still yearn for him or her. Boy, you'll see how to get free fast. You see people as they really are inwardly, how vicious they are. And see what a sucker you have been, how you have let them use you. Then you see if your heart still breaks over losing John or Mary. Watch the change in your attitude toward people, how you cease to idealize them and yearn for them and wish you could get them back if you've lost someone. Right?
In line with the idea of useless thoughts, the regret for the past, the things, the mistakes we made in the past, these would be completely useless, wouldn't they?
Of course they would. And why would they be useless? You tell us.
Well, because we think that if we had met if I had met a different man, or if someone had met a different woman, or if we lived in a different place, or had a different kind of social life or economic life, things would have been different, and today we would be happy, or I would be happy.
Yes.
And we're placing it all on the outer things. Because people have said, if I could turn the calendar back, but turning the calendar back is no good if you haven't changed inside. You would just go back to do the same unhappy, unfortunate things.
Right. Do you know, maybe this is the first time those of you listening to this tape have heard this, and this connects very much with what you said. Do you know, and if you don't, give it right thought, reflect on it. Do you know that at this precise instant, which is about 5 minutes after 11 o'clock in the morning, do you know that this precise instant you are a free human being? If you knew this, if you saw this, you would have no regrets of the past at all. That is not humility to regret the past. That's not being wise to regret the past. That is just another prison cell because you're thinking about it in order to hold on to yourself, what you call yourself. You have to cut yourself off from time. And that's what memory is. That's what regret is. A person who feels ashamed, now listen, this is the fact, this is the truth. A person who feels ashamed over anything he did a minute ago or 50 years ago is trapped by this shame and has cut himself off from his freedom of right now. Look at all the things that you must connect with this, and I'm sure you do if you've been listening. The idea of time, the idea of identity. You see these two main things? Therefore, you're just thinking about it, and you're thinking about it in the now, right now. But you make the mistake of thinking that thinking about it preserves you, even a sinful you, a terrible you. And that will continue you being a terrible you, because that's mechanical thought in action. You are free, I am free, in truth, in reality, at this very second, which is not a philosophy, but a fact. And so it takes work and it takes courage to drop the past. Any past. Don't run over your childhood of how happy you were and all that. That is an evasion of now. That's an evasion of reality, of the truth, of nowness, which is the only time you live in, is right now. The other is mere memory. It's also a wonderful distraction, isn't it? From your pains of now, you got yourself in this big mess. Now you think back how lovely it was when you were 18 and young, and oh, if I could just live over again and knew all the things that I know now. That's just another miserable, self-torturing thought. You drop it. Have the courage to drop it. It has nothing to do with the reality or with what you really are at all. But we get, again, the pseudo-pleasure of running these things over in our mind. Memory and thought. See? We think with memory some of the time, sometimes with imagination. You've divided yourself already by thinking how nice it would have been if I had not made that blunder when I was 18. Never mind that. That's gone completely. It has no hold over you, no power. Look, nothing holds you except the illusion that something holds you. Nothing. To be repentant, to see how terrible you were, is egotism and nothing else. Or to see how good you were is egotism and nothing else. They're both equal chains. So we have to keep bringing ourselves back to now, every second. Snapping, breaking, interrupting, mechanical thought, memory thought, emotional thought, boring thought, nagging thought, tormenting thought. Break it, break it, break it. Bring yourself back to now. Gradually, you'll succeed, in little ways at first, because you'll see the false pleasure as false pleasure, and you won't want anything to do with it. Oh, there's so many things concerned with this. This is why we're talking in so many ways as we can, and trying to hold them all in our mind at once, so we can see them all at once. Seeing vanity, how vanity connects with time, to see how emotions connect with self-identities, to see how suspicion connects with false ideas about how you can be a benefit to me if I please you. If I can put on a good act in front of you, you will give me something which will make me feel better. That is an illusion. That's a falsehood. You have nothing on earth for me. I have nothing for you. Furthermore, I don't need anything from you, and you don't need anything from me. You are complete right now, this very second. I'm complete right now. You have nothing to get. You have nothing to think about except on the level of practical thought. There's nothing to get. There's nowhere to go. Stay where you are and you'll see this. Stay right here. Stay where you are. Don't wander off into regrets or praise of yesterday. Try staying where you are sometime and see what happens. Yes?
It's so extremely easy to look back and think of negative emotions and wander in these daydreams, and it's extremely difficult. It's easy to bring yourself to awareness at the moment, but to sit and contemplate without falling back into negative emotion is the extremely difficult procedure, it would seem to me.
That's why we're throwing all our attention into this work, not just here in the group, but when we go home, when we walk down the steps, because it is difficult. We have to do it every second. Become aware of your physical body and the rest of it. We know it's hard work. We've never denied that.
Well, sometimes being aware isn't enough, because we are thrown with thoughts constantly. Isn't this approximately correct?
Thoughts are thrown to us constantly.
Okay, all right, put it that
And
way.
we want pass judgment one way or another upon our thoughts. How can you empty the mind by being aware? Yes, this I understand. This being aware of right now is fine. But how can you?
It's so simple.
Watch.
It's so
It's so
simple.
simple, but what do you replace with what you thrown out with?
It's so simple you don't see it.
This is true. It's so simple we don't see. I don't see it.
If I tell myself to drop this glass, I drop it. I tell you to drop the thought, period. Now don't ask me how I drop it. Do it. Drop it. Don't ask how. Why don't you just do it? Don't get complicated. Don't get scientific. Drop it.
These are, sorry, these
Sally,
are good
you
words.
sometimes seem ready to burst with something, and I'm so anxious to hear.
These are good words to remember. Drop it. I've been working on this week, and these thoughts are going through our minds, but if you just try and drop it, it works.
Yeah. At first, resistance is there.
Uh-huh.
Then
But
you
I
want-
mean, when you see it, and you drop it, and keep doing this.
There is, let's repeat a point to see why it is difficult to drop it. Yeah. There is great false pleasure in the railroad freight car running through our mind continuously and endlessly. There's great pleasure in it. Watch people's faces when you see them on the street or in the home, and you can practically see how they're totally absorbed in this stream of thoughts. Now, you know what it means to be asleep now, don't you, when you see them? Don't you? They're gone. And you say something to them, and they jump a little bit. They were gone. They were in Africa on an exposition or something. There's great false pleasure in that. And we're here to understand that it is false pleasure so that we can begin to drop it. We have about 5,000 elements that we have to bring together and try to see at once. We're trying to see a dozen things at once. Maybe the start, all we can see is one thing that we must interrupt our thoughts. Then we can see a difficulty in interrupting it. Then we can see that the old ways have given us nothing but misery, and that's another element. We get about 500 elements together all at once, and we see, we understand. Then we continue to work, because there'll be something else. There's no end to our work. There'll be no end to our progress. Same thing, isn't it?
When you mentioned self-torturing thoughts before, something just rang a bell with me because it made me think of how much pleasure I had always gotten out of self-torturing thoughts.
Amen.
Did you get that too? I mean, it was just like a fire engine went off or something, and it immediately came to me of the tremendous pleasure that's involved in it.
Yes.
Pleasure in what he's talking
Why
about.
is that?
too. Walking down the street and thinking everybody's looking at you. This is a tremendous pleasure because look at me. Everybody, look at, I'm the center of attention, and everybody's looking at me, and this is a tremendous pleasure. And that's why you have to look at it as you walk down the street. Eventually you walk down the street and you won't care who's looking at you because you'll just get rid of that false pleasure, which is the...
But you won't ever say, I don't care whether you're looking at me or not, because that is still thought, right? It's out of your mind.
Because then you would have the opposite.
That's
Yeah,
right.
well,
If I don't care.
That's an interesting.
Yeah, that's right.
No,
You're right.
no.
I'm glad you caught that.
Bring this up again in another way.
Very interesting.
Look, if you are not an alcoholic, when you get up in the morning, you're not. When you get up in the morning, you don't say, well, should I drink or shouldn't I drink? I've got to fight drink. Alcohol is not on your mind either way. Not at all, is it? It's only when you're trapped by it that you say, I mustn't drink, I must drink. See? Not on your thought at all. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I think the word humility is another trap we can fall into real easy. When we want to identify ourselves as a humble, or now I will assume a humble idea.
Pose.
Pose. This is another ego gratification, and I mean a gratification.
Yeah. Huh? Have you ever, I know you have, we all do
It's
it
a pleasure.
quite casually, I'm sure. Have you ever watched people playing their roles? Do that as part of your work, as well as ourselves. Have you, you tell me, some instance maybe where you've seen a person playing a role. Can you remember any?
Well, I used to belong to an organization with Japanese, and they were supposed to be very humble. And I saw the most violent, arrogant human being I ever saw in my life. It was so shocking that when I finally woke up, I couldn't believe what I saw.
Yes.
And they're supposed to be, and this woman who was head of the design was simple, little, humble, little Japanese woman. That was her, the way she started out. And she was just so violent, you just couldn't believe
Yes,
it.
yes. Some of them are quite obvious, and some can be very, very subtle. Don't be fooled by anyone.
Boy, today
Don't
I-
believe people are as nice as they appear to be. No one is.
No, that's right.
Well, this Oriental expression of saving face can also be interpreted as an Occidental expression of saving face.
Same
This is
thing.
what so many of us attempt to do. We are into a situation and we try and take an easy way out, and this is saving face for both concerned, instead of bringing it up, observing it, and dropping it, as you said.
Ask yourself during the day, all during the day, among many other things you're doing, ask, where might I be playing a small role? Look for little things. Where might I be playing a small role? And you'll see so many things in that, you'll want to drop it. You see the tension in playing a role. When you're playing a role, you have to do things just right. You have to be careful to walk the center, or you'll offend. If you go too far this way, you'll offend that group or that group. So you're playing a role. See how miserable it is. That should be enough to make us want to drop it, if nothing else would. Catch yourself in small roles. See other people in small roles. The affable salesman. Anybody can smile when they want a commission, right? Let's take 5 minutes more, then we'll end.
I think one of the things that's that I have to look at is when in a crowd and everybody is doing something and you don't want to do it. And I'm wondering the motive of that. Everybody gets furious. Of course, I know what I should be doing, but like I'm just observing being in Las Vegas right now. My husband is disturbed because I don't go along maybe to the show or to the gambling with this. He would be very happy if I did this, and it causes a conflict, which I'm watching very closely. It's very, it's really weird when you think that a person would like you to do everything wrong, you know, and so that you can, you know, be a fun person. And so this is a thing that I'm looking at, and it's giving me a good opportunity if I never gone along with it.
All right, just make that a general part of your self-study, your own reactions to it. Find out if you're getting any pleasure.
That's what I wanted to, yes, that's it.
Out of being different.
That's-
Maybe you're getting pleasure out of being different and don't see it. This as a general statement, let us beware of mechanical moralities.
That's the question.
What is a mechanical morality? Somebody tell me.
A person who does things for show.
Okay? The acting, the self-image again, the hope of a reward. Don't expect any reward except to find yourself. Just put that first. The rest will fall away. False rewards have a tremendous hold on us. There are chains. And then when we get them, what happens? Huh?
The other side.
They're kind of empty, aren't they? Now you have to hang on to them and fight other people to keep them. Be afraid of losing them. Lose everything you fear to lose and see what happens to you. Repeat. Lose everything you fear to lose and see what happens. And then stay with what happens. Don't fight. Don't fight anything. Never fight for anything. You know what I'm talking about.
That's the hardest part. Because
This
there's
is-
always something that you're trying to protect. That's the hardest part right there.
I have always had a very defensive nature, and you think that isn't the hardest thing in the world to fight? Somebody said, you didn't do this right, I will think of 1,000 things why I think maybe I did do it right.
Defensiveness, yes.
And that isn't necessary at all, is it? The
No.
best defense is no defense.
No defense.
Another? No defense.
Do you see, when you don't put on a defense, what's going to happen? You're going to be terrified. All right, that is what we're getting at.
Don't protect it.
We are trying to be consciously afraid, which simply means to see how afraid we are. But if you defend, you don't see. You're pushing it away so you don't see. We want to see that we're not only fearful, but we are the very fear itself. It's exactly me. I am fear itself. You've read this, I know. But that's a fact. When I see this, then something else happens. You experience for yourself. I'll conclude this by saying that we want to detect useless thoughts of all kinds. Just find your own examples of it in your own personal life. Find useless thoughts, then have the courage to drop them. They won't want to let go because they become part of what you call yourself, and they become valuable to you in a false way. But it's artificial value. Detect and drop useless thoughts.
This is the end of the tape.